Our grandfather was obsessed with safety. Whenever my brother and I went out, he would always tell us to be careful and to watch out for cars and slippery spots on the ground. If we were playing around the house, he demanded that we keep an eye out for sharp corners on the coffee table or wires that we could trip over. Even when we were going to bed, he would stand over us and warn us about the dangers of our blankets getting wrapped around our necks. He would demand that we listen to each other breathe if we ever woke up in the middle of the night, just to make sure. To make matters worse, he would follow us in his pickup truck wherever we went, the loaded gun rack dissuading everyone from interfering with us. We could see him when we were in school, always parked outside, just in case anything might happen. As Reggie and I got older, we started to get tired of his nagging. We weren't kids anymore. We didn't need to be coddled and watched over. When we turned 16, Reggie and I got a present very uncharacteristic of our safety-fetishing grandfather. He had adopted 2 dogs, twin brothers, just like me and Reg. They were Caucasian Ovcharkas, apparently the same breed he used to work with when he was stationed in Siberia, back before he and my grandmother moved to the States. Over the 11 years that we lived with him, we had never been allowed to go anywhere near dogs. Even the little ones. "They will kill your brother," he would always say. The guilt we felt from that statement would always get one of us to tell the other to leave the animal alone. The Ovcharkas were truly enormous. I had never seen such massive dogs. They were both well over 200 pounds, and neither of them were overweight. When I leaned over and gave one of them a tentative pat, it felt like there was iron under the thick fur. Its tail didn't wag, and it didn't even look at me. Both animals just stared at Grandpa. We were told that their names were Mikhail and Sergey. Reggie looked as uncomfortable as I felt. We thanked our grandfather for our gifts, but it was obvious that we were both unnerved. Grandpa asked us if we remembered the dog that we had before our parents died. Neither of us did. He told us that it was a beagle named Chair, a useless animal, he informed us. As our birthday dragged on, Grandpa taught us how to take care for the Ovcharkas. For the first few hours, they would only listen to him. Whenever we spoke to them or even tried pushing them in the direction we wanted them to go, they would wait for him to give the command before moving. By nighttime, though, the dogs had started to accept the commands from my brother and me. Their responses were not instantaneous, like they were with Grandpa, but it was still progress. The next day, we realized why we'd gotten our animals. The dogs were never to leave our sides. Rather than Grandpa cautioning and watching us all day, every day, he would simply transfer his authority over to the animals. We were pissed, Reggie especially. He had always been the more outspoken one, and as a result, had most often incurred Grandpa's wrath. This time, though, Reggie wasn't slapped when he called the whole arrangement bullshit. Grandpa wrinkled his deeply scarred face and yelled something in Russian. The dogs leapt at my brother. Reggie screamed and flailed, but the dogs had him on the ground in an instant. They stood over him, growling and frothing, until Grandpa yelled another word we didn't understand. They backed away and Reggie got up. He didn't complain anymore. Since we were on summer vacation, we had a lot of downtime. Wherever we went, though, the dogs followed. We would walk down the street with the 2 in tow. They would growl at anyone who came near, whether it was one of our friends who came up to say hello, or the cashier at the store who yelled that no dogs were allowed in the place. Anyone who presented even a hint of a potential threat was intimidated by the growling guard dogs. For Mikhail and Sergey, a potential threat was being within 5 feet of us. On a hot day in early August, we were at the lake down the street. As usual, no one wanted to be near us because of the two wary, grumpy Ovcharkas. Reggie and I went swimming. The dogs, of course, swam alongside. Out of absolutely nowhere, there was a speedboat bearing down on us. Before anyone, dog or person, could react, Reggie was struck. The hull of the boat crushed his skull, and the propeller tore through his skin like wet paper. The driver just kept going. Reggie's corpse floated face up in the bloody water. His face was destroyed. One eye was completely missing, while the other draped itself over his left cheek. There was nothing but a gory channel, the same demeanor as the boat's propeller. Tangles of his shredded intestines leaked their contents into the water. Mikhail and Sergei swam in silence, staring at his carcass. I was beside myself with panic and rage. I screamed and tried to drag my brother's body toward the shore. As soon as I touched him, Sergei bit my arm hard. I let go of Reggie and hit the dog. He stopped biting. Again I tried to move my brother. Another bite. This time, the dog pulled me away from Reggie, while Mikhail swam in a circle around my brother's body. I felt my radius and ulna snap under the pressure of Sergei's jaw. I shrieked and started punching the animal. My assault did nothing to release the pressure. Mikhail's growl caught my attention. I felt it in my chest before I heard it. I whirled around and saw something moving inside my brother. No, not inside. All over. His skin was undulating and stretching while the bones underneath popped and cracked, as if they were all breaking. His ribs spread twice the width of his chest, some puncturing through the flesh as they went. The remains of his guts started slapping and flopping around like a net full of eels poured onto a deck of a fishing boat. A deep, resonant moan rose from the destroyed form of my brother. I started to back away. This time, Sergei let me move. I swam backward while watching the unbelievable scene unfold. Both dogs watched Reggie while I stood there on shore, overcome by fear and confusion. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I yelped and spun around to see the scarred face of my grandfather. He had been following us again. He held a shotgun. On our sides, bathers were running from the lakeside toward their cars. "Watch," Grandpa instructed. What I once knew as Reggie flailed and howled. The water, unturbed from his unhuman trashings, was pink and foamy from the release of his blood and other bodily fluids. His moaning intensified, causing me to cover my ears. I turned to run, but he held me by the back of my neck and wouldn't let me move. "Watch," my grandfather hissed. Reggie stopped moving. The dogs who had been paddling close to him barked furiously. Massive stalactites of bone began to erupt from the remains of my brother. As they burst through, the dogs attacked. They tore the already damaged flesh of the creature, ripping out thick chunks before pushing their faces in to get more. As they bit, the Reggie creature moved towards us. As the water around it grew shallower, a bit more of its body was revealed to us. It walked on 5 pillars of articulated bone. The segments were joined by oozing fatty tissue. It moved slowly, but deliberately. Bulbous white eyes squeezed themselves through the cracked sockets of its skull. They rotated and then focused on my grandfather and me. As it walked, the dogs were tearing more and more of its body into shreds. Sergei attacked its legs. As the gristle and fat were pulled from between its segments, the creature slowed. Still, it didn't stop. An oozified spike shot from the rib area of the monster, impaling Sergei through the chest. The dog was dead. Mikhail, in a renewed frenzy, tore the remaining connective tissue from the other 4 legs. By the time it had stopped moving, it was only 10 feet away from us. Mihail ripped the creature apart, splitting its bowels and meat from its bulbous eyes all over the sand. And then he stopped. Whatever Reggie had become was dead. Grandpa let me go. Mihail went over to Sergei and began to lick the mortal wound in his brother's chest. He whimpered and sat in the sand, panting. I sobbed as the pressure I had felt released. My grandfather slapped me and held my face in a vice grip between his leathery palms. I stared at the deep lettucework of scars covering his face. I always thought it would have been you, he hissed. My grandfather made the same mistake with me. He traced his facial scars with his fingernail. Then he grabbed my broken arm, causing me to yelp. At least this will heal. I glanced over my shoulder. The remains of the monster had turned into a foul-smelling gelatin. Seabirds were diving and collecting it in their beaks before it could absorb into the sand. Those who managed to get a beakful died moments later, falling from the sky into the lake or the sand. I thought your father knew better, Grandpa grunted as he walked. I didn't say anything. He kept mumbling in frustration when we got into the house. A fucking beagle, he murmured. I sat on the couch and started crying.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and comment, and become part of the Unity by hitting the subscribe button. If you have a scary story that you would like to share, be sure to send it to my email or post it on the free horror stories subreddit. Consider donating to this channel and be sure to follow me on Twitter. And until next time, stay spooky and never forget, there's always a reason to be afraid.